So now we are back for the second part of Chapter 1 review, starting with number 10 from page 62 now in your Chapter 1 review. Simplify the expression. Simplify the expression basically means that we're going to combine like terms. So for number 10, first we would start with 25x and negative 6x. Those are like terms because they both have x to the first connected to them. So if you take 25 minus 6, because you need to take the sign that's in front of both of those, so it's positive 25 minus 6, you'd get 9x. Next we would take the last two like terms, and that would be positive 14 minus 17. Those are also like terms. Even though they're constants and they do not have a variable after them, they are like terms. If we add those together, we would get negative 3. So your final answer for number 10 would be 9x minus 3. Moving on to number 11. You do want to put number 11 in standard form. Therefore, we're going to start with the variable that starts first in the alphabet. That's when we use standard form. So we'd start with the x's. Positive 12 minus 9 is 3x. Then we combine the y's. 6 minus 12 is negative 6. So your final answer would be 3x minus 6y. Moving on to number 12. This one we'd have to first start, you'd see there's a distributive property in there. So we'll start with that. First you take the 6 times the n and you get 6n. Then you take 6 times the negative 2, notice there's a minus sign in front of it. So it'd be 6 times negative 2 is minus 12. Next we would bring down the minus 8n plus 40. And once you've done that, then it's just a matter of collecting like terms again. So we'd start with the n's. 6 minus 8 is negative 2, so it'd be negative 2n. Then you combine the constants. Negative 12 plus 40 would be positive 28. So that would be your answer, negative 2n plus 28. Moving on to 13, this time you actually have two distributive properties. So we're going to start with that. When you do that, you end up with 5 times 2b is 10b, and then 5 times positive 3 is plus 15, and then you take positive 8 times the b, so you get plus 8b, and then positive 8 times negative 6 would be minus 48. Once you have those, again, you just collect like terms. 10b plus 8b is 18b. And then positive 15 minus 48 is negative 33. So that'd be our answer, 18b minus 33. Number 14, this one's a little bit different only because there's exponents on the variable. First you would start out with the variable that has the same exponents. Always start with the highest exponent first. So I'm going to start with the g squared. We've got positive 9g squared minus 12g squared. 9 minus 12 is negative 3, so it would be negative 3g squared. And then you take the 3g plus g. And when you have just a regular g, remember there's a 1 in front of it. So it would be 3 plus 1 would be plus 4g. And that'd be your answer, negative 3g squared plus 4g. Number 15 works the same, combine like terms. I'm going to skip that one. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in class. Now we move on to number 16. Now we have a word problem. A New York City taxi charges $2.50 plus 40 cents for each fifth of a mile if it is not delayed by traffic. Write an expression for the cost of the ride if you travel X miles in the taxi with no traffic delays. So first you want to think about how much does it actually cost per mile? Because notice it says we want to write an expression if you travel X miles. But notice it's 40 cents for each fifth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 40 cents and multiply it by 5. That'll give us the cost for a full mile, which gives us $2. After that, I can now write 2x. That's the cost for X miles. $2 times the number of miles total. Then what we do is we add that $2.50 charge. You're going to get that charge no matter what. That's the initial charge. So that's going to end up being your expression, 2x plus 2.5. And remember, an expression has no equals sign. So that would be your answer, 2x plus 2.5. That is an expression. So that would be number 16. Number 17. Now we're going to start solving equations. And notice it also says to check your solution. I'm not going to check the solution for these, but just remember to always go back and plug in your answer and make sure that it works. Then you know you've done it right every time. So always check your solution. And if it doesn't work out, then you've done something wrong. So then you know you need to fix something. Number 17, I'm going to skip, mostly because a lot of these are going to be kind of the same steps. So I'm going to start with number 18. And notice we've got negative 6y plus 15 equals negative 9. So you see you've got plus 15. The first thing we always want to do is get rid of addition and subtraction. Since there's a plus 15, I'm going to subtract 15. When you do that on one side, you need to do that to both sides of the equation. That's going to then leave us with negative 6y. These guys cancel each other out. That's the point. You're trying to get rid of some things so that we can get the y by itself. And then negative 9 minus 15 is negative 24. Once you've got this, now we've got it to get y by itself. They multiplied by negative 6, so we're going to divide by negative 6. And when you do that, you have to do it to both sides of the equation. So basically what that does is that factors this out. Those become 1, so it'd be 1y equals negative 24 divided by negative 6 is positive 4. And again, you could go back and plug that in and see if it works. 4 is the correct answer for number 18. Moving on. Number 19. This one you could actually do a couple different ways. You could distribute the 4 first, so it'd be 4q minus 20, and then solve it that way. But I'm going to show you a different way. I think this way is pretty cool. Since it's 4 times this whole thing, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide by 4 first. And the cool thing about that is when I do that, these 4's end up factoring out, and that just leaves us with q minus 5 equals 4. Now it's a one-step equation from here. All I need to do is add 5 to both sides. Then I end up with q equals 9. And then you're done with number 19. So again, you could distribute that one from the get-go, but I like to divide by the 4 first and get rid of that. Number 20. Notice this one's a little bit different because I have the variable on both sides. I've got 7m over here, negative 5m over here. I'm going to put those on both sides, or on one side, excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 5m to both sides. And notice I'm going to line the m's up so I don't get confused. 7 plus 5 is 12, so that would give me 12m plus 38. And then these guys cancel each other out, so I have equals. Don't forget to drop the negative down with the 16. Now it's a simple two-step equation. Next, what I would do is subtract the 38. Make sure you do that from both sides. So I'd end up with 12m equals negative 16 minus 38 is going to be a bigger negative. It's going to be negative 54. So now all I need to do is divide both sides by 12. So we divide both sides by 12. Once I do that, I get m equals negative. Now, 54 divided by 12 isn't going to be a nice, pretty number. But if I reduce that fraction, you got to think, what goes into 54 and 12? I know that I could start with 2. If I did that, if I started with 2, 54 divided by 2 is 27. And then 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now, obviously, I could have gone a little further because I also know that 3 goes into 27 and 6. So I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to go negative 9 halves, or negative 4.5. So from the get-go, I actually could have divided by, think about it, we did 2 and we did 3, so I could have divided by 6 right off the bat and gotten negative 9 halves. But it's a good thing to always check anyways. So let's say you do get something like negative 27 over 6, make sure it's reduced all the way at the end. Because if you don't have it completely reduced, you will get a point off in your work on a test. So please make sure you reduce as far as you can. Moving on, number 21. Again, we have variables on both sides. So actually, we just did a problem like that. So I'm going to actually skip this one. Okay? If you have any questions on number 21, please feel free to ask in class. I would love to answer your questions. Number 22, notice there's distributive property on both sides. So first I'm going to distribute the 8. 8 times 2n is 16n. 8 times negative 5 is minus 40. Equals, now we're going to distribute on this side, 3 times 6n is 18n. And 3 times negative 2 is minus 6. So now when I work this out, again, we want to get all the n's on one side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 18n. You can do this a couple ways. You could have subtracted the 16n, which sometimes is nice because then you would have had a positive number. But you can still do it this way. 16 minus 18 is negative 2. So negative 2n, drop the minus 40 down, equals, these two cancel each other out, and we drop down the negative 6. Again, make sure you bring the negative down. Now we just add 40 to both sides. That leaves us with negative 2n. These guys cancel, equals negative 6 plus 40 is 34. Now what we're going to do is divide by that negative 2 so that these two negative 2's factor out and leave us with 1n equals 34 divided by negative 2 is negative 17. So there we have it. That would be our, excuse me, that would be our answer for number 22. Moving right along. Number 23. You buy a jacket and the sales tax is 6%. The total cost is $79.49. Find the cost of the jacket before the tax. Well, let's start with something. Let's figure out what are we going to have our variable be. So I'm going to let X be the cost of the jacket. Now I know that I have to, first of all, pay the cost of the jacket. So that's going to be the X. Okay? So that's where I have this X right here. That is the cost of my jacket. Then what I need to do is I need to find the 6% sales tax. And what we would do is we would take 6%, change that to a decimal, so it would be 0.06, and then multiply it by the cost of the jacket. So now we've got the cost of the jacket here and the sales tax of the jacket here, and we're going to add those two together. So that's where we have that equation of x plus 0.06x equals 79.49. Now when we put those together, we end up with 1.06x equals 79.49. Then you divide both sides by 1.06, and that's going to leave you with $74.99. That was my doorbell. Now, one thing to remember, make sure you always bring the label into your answer on a word problem. So we have $74.99. And that concludes part 2 of Chapter 1 review.